In Chapter 11, we're going to become familiar with some of the tissues and organ systems found in the human body. Humans will be our example for a couple of reasons. First, you're probably more familiar with human anatomy than that of other animals. Second, there's a lot of similarities between humans and other animals. Remember that a tissue is a group of similar cells. They're similar in appearance, they have similar functions. We're going to look at 4 different categories of tissues: epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous tissue. These tissues are found throughout the human body. Let's start with epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue covers the surfaces of your body. This includes both external and internal surfaces. Examples include the outer surface of your skin, the linings of body cavities, covering the surface of the internal organs, even lining blood vessels. Depending on its location, epithelial tissue may have 3 different functions. Protection is an important function of the epithelium forming the surface of your skin. It prevents many diseases from entering your body. Also think of the calluses on your hands and feet. It also protects you from losing too much water. Lining your digestive tract and the tiniest airways in your lungs, the epithelium is much thinner. Absorption is its primary function. Epithelial tissue is also an important component of glands. In glands, its primary function is the secretion of various products. This illustration from your textbook shows the location and variety found in epithelial tissue. Our second tissue, connective tissue, contains several different types. They differ greatly in appearance and function, but what they all share in common is an extracellular matrix of some type. Extracellular means located outside of or surrounding the cells. This matrix may be solid, fibrous, or a liquid. Connective tissues, in some way or another, connect various parts of your body. The connections can be primarily of a supportive or protective nature, for example with bone. In a very different way, connective refers to the tissues being able to contact or be in contact with other cells. For example, carrying information, carrying needed materials, or waste products, such as what the blood does. Stretching the idea of connectivity, fat is connective tissue, which stores energy in the form of lipids. Adipose tissue, commonly called fat, has an extracellular matrix and thus is considered connective tissue. Loose fibrous connective tissue is found in many locations in your body. In appearance and in function, it is similar to plastic wrap. The extracellular matrix contains lots of fibers which run in many different directions, forming a network. This network of crisscrossing fibers gives loose fibrous connective tissue strength and stretchy flexibility. The elastic nature of your skin is largely due to the loose fibrous connective tissue found within it. Surrounding and supporting many of the internal organs are broad sheets of loose fibrous connective tissue. Dense fibrous connective tissue also has an extracellular matrix composed of fibers, but in this case the fibers run parallel to one another. This gives dense fibrous connective tissue the appearance of rope. Like loose fibrous connective tissue, dense fibrous connective tissue is very flexible, but unlike loose, dense fibrous connective tissue is not very stretchy. It's used to connect muscle to bone, forming tendons. It also connects bone to bone, especially in your joints, forming structures called ligaments. Fat is a common name for adipose tissue. Remember the slide you looked at in lab of adipose tissue? It looks very different from dense or fibrous connective tissue, but like those, it has a fibrous extracellular matrix. An obvious function of adipose tissue is the storage of energy in the form of lipids. Adipose also serves a role in protection. Many of the internal organs are surrounded by a layer of fat. Here, it functions kind of like bubble wrap, providing padding. Animals that live in cold environments often have a thick layer of fat under the skin. Blubber, found in whales, walruses, and seals, is a great example. But even people living in these cold environments also develop an insulating layer of adipose tissue under the skin. These next two types of connective tissue, cartilage and bone, people are sometimes surprised to learn that they're living tissues. In cartilage, the living cells are surrounded by a thick layer of a jello-like extracellular matrix. Cartilage supports somewhat flexible parts of your body, for example your ears and your nose. The discs between the vertebrae, the backbone in other words, are cushioned by discs of cartilage. A precursor to bone is also a function of cartilage. This refers to the fact that your skeleton is first laid down in the form of cartilage and then replaced by bone. Newborn babies are super flexible because the ends of their long bones are still cartilage. Like cartilage, bone is a living tissue. In this case, the extracellular matrix is a solid composed primarily of calcium salts. Support and protection are obvious functions of bone. Primarily in the longer bones, for example your thigh bone, stem cells are present which produce new blood cells. Mineral storage, calcium for example, is another function of bone. People as they age, especially women after menopause, may have trouble absorbing enough calcium from their food. The body takes that calcium that they need from the bones. Osteoporosis, where the bones become much weaker and brittle, can result. Blood is another type of connective tissue. In this case, the extracellular matrix is a liquid called the plasma. Unlike other tissues, blood is composed of very different cells, red and white blood cells, also platelets. Blood is responsible for quickly transporting a variety of different substances throughout the body. Immunity, protecting your body from disease-causing agents, is another important function of blood. A third function is temperature regulation. Especially noticeable in fair-skinned people, when they get too cold, the skin takes on a bluish cast. This is because very little blood is being delivered to the surface of the skin and extremities, thus conserving heat. When you're too hot, the opposite happens. More blood is sent to the surface of the skin. The skin takes on a rosy color and excess heat is more easily released. Let's look at the different types of cells found in the blood. Normally, the most abundant are the red blood cells, also called erythrocytes. Erythro means red and cyte means container. They carry most of the oxygen transported by the blood. There are actually several different types of white blood cells, collectively called leukocytes. Leuko means white. Together, the different types of white blood cells protect you from disease. Platelets, also called thrombocytes, play a central role in blood clot formation. The liquid, non-living component of the blood is called plasma. It's mostly water, but with lots of other substances dissolved in that water. This is a picture from your textbook. It represents what a sample of blood would look like after being in a centrifuge. A centrifuge is a device that spins samples very rapidly and is useful in separating things by mass. In this figure, it shows the plasma as a straw-colored liquid, which it is. I also like this picture because it clearly shows that red blood cells are typically much more abundant than white blood cells or platelets. Sometimes a doctor will ask for a white blood cell count when trying to diagnose a disease. In response to an infection, white blood cells become more numerous. Muscle tissue is our next general type of tissue. It's not connective tissue. The most important function of muscle is movement. Its contraction either moves your body from place to place or moves things within your body. For example, the contraction of muscle in your heart pumps the blood throughout your body. Protection is another function of muscle. When I was a mischievous little boy in need of direction, my dad would swat a very well-padded muscular rearward part of my body. A third function of muscle tissue is heat production. Think back to the last time that you were very cold and shivering. Muscles were contracting rapidly, increasing the rate of aerobic respiration, and heat was a byproduct. We'll next look at three different types of muscle: skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. Skeletal muscle is sometimes called voluntary muscle because you have a lot of conscious control over the movement of these. The cells in skeletal muscle are rod-shaped and have obvious dark and light bands called striations. The name skeletal muscle refers to the fact that most of these muscles are attached to the skeleton. Their contraction moves parts of the skeleton. Smooth muscle lacks the striation seen in skeletal muscle. It's sometimes called involuntary muscle because you have little or no conscious control over the movement of these. The name visceral muscle refers to the fact that it's often commonly associated with the internal organs. Typically, contraction of smooth muscle moves materials through the organs. For example, the contraction of smooth muscle moves your food through the digestive tract as it's being digested. Cardiac muscle is found only in the heart. It has striations like skeletal muscles, but is branched rather than rod-shaped. Like smooth muscle, you don't have voluntary control over its contractions. Cardiac muscle is unique in that it has intercalated discs. These are junctions between the cells which have lots of openings, and these allow the rapid transmission of the signal to contract from one cell to the next. This is important because it allows the cells of a region of the heart to quickly receive the message and to contract in unison. Our fourth tissue type is nervous tissue. A neuron is a single cell of nervous tissue. Nerves, in contrast, are composed of several neurons which are going to the same general region of the body. Nervous tissue allows for different parts of your body to rapidly communicate with one another. Much of the cell anatomy shown in this figure I would like for you to ignore. Please do realize that there are three different kinds of neurons: sensory neurons, interneurons, and motor neurons. They function somewhat like one-way streets with information moving in only one direction along the neuron. Sensory neurons carry information from the body or the environment surrounding the body towards the brain. The brain is composed primarily of interneurons. They receive information from the sensory neurons, they interpret that information, and decide if some action is required. If action is required, that signal is sent out by motor neurons from the brain to some other part of the body. For example, a motor neuron might communicate with a muscle, causing that muscle to contract. Tissues are made up of a single type of cell, typically. Organs are made up of many different tissues working together. An organ system is made up of several different organs working together to perform a set of tasks. I would like for you to know the names of these 10 organ systems and be able to briefly tell me what each does. Don't worry about being able to name all the organs in an organ system at this time. Later we'll look at some of these organ systems and I'll ask you to know the individual organs at that time. The organs of the digestive system basically form a tube that the food passes through as it's broken down and then absorbed. Proteins are broken down into amino acids. Complex carbohydrates are broken down into simple sugars. These are absorbed into the bloodstream, primarily at the small intestine. The cardiovascular system is also known as the circulatory system. It's composed of the heart, various blood vessels, and the blood. Substances are picked up at various locations and transported elsewhere in the body. For example, oxygen is picked up in the lungs, transported to all the cells of the body. At the cells, carbon dioxide is picked up and then carried back to the lungs where it can be exhaled. The lymphatic system is kind of like another circulatory system. Unlike the circulatory system, the fluid, which is called lymph, is picked up at various locations in the body and then transported back towards the heart. This lymph is primarily plasma that leaked out of the circulatory system. It's transported to the large veins above the heart. Here the lymph is put back into the bloodstream. The lymphatic system is also different in that there are filters called lymph nodes at various locations in the body. They help to remove debris and foreign cells from the lymph. In this diagram they're shown as black dots. The respiratory system is composed of the lungs and air passageways. The respiratory system enables the body to acquire oxygen from the atmosphere and also to get rid of carbon dioxide that's being produced by aerobic respiration. The excretory system includes kidneys, bladder, and the tubes leading from these organs. The excretory system removes primarily waste that were produced elsewhere in the body, which are delivered to the kidneys by way of the circulatory system. The excretory system also plays a key role in maintaining the water balance in your body. The nervous system is composed of the brain and the nerves leading to and from the brain. It gathers information from the body and the surrounding environment. It processes that information, determining if an action is warranted. Signals to take action are then carried out to the appropriate parts of the body. The musculoskeletal system is sometimes divided into two separate organ systems, the skeletal and the muscular system. Since many of the large muscles attach to the skeleton, it makes sense to consider them as one. Protection and movement are two important functions of this system. The reproductive system makes possible the production of new individuals using sexual reproduction. Gametes, in other words the eggs or sperm, are produced by this system. The reproductive system facilitates internal fertilization in mammals, where the egg and the sperm unite in the female's reproductive tract. In mammals, the female reproductive system also provides a safe environment for the baby to develop. Sex hormones, which regulate reproduction and are responsible for the development of secondary sexual characteristics, are produced by the ovaries and the testes. The endocrine system consists of several different glands that regulate various other organ systems. Control is provided through the production of various hormones. These hormones are chemical signals that are typically picked up by the bloodstream and then transported throughout the body. The skin is an organ system. Epithelium is just the outermost layers. Connective, muscle, and nervous tissues are also part of the skin. The integumentary system includes all the various glands that are associated with the skin, various receptors that attach to sensory neurons, providing the sensations of touch, temperature, and pain. The skin is also an important first line of defense in protecting the body from disease. Remember that homeostasis is the maintenance of the conditions necessary to sustain life. All of the organ systems function together to maintain homeostasis in our bodies. And that ends Chapter 11.